Were you here for Iverson? Were you here for Iverson?
No, this was my first time on Battle Walk. I've been here 5 times, but...
How did you know how to wear the Iron Maiden shirt? Or you just happen to wear it?
I see a lot of
Iron Maiden.
Anything you go, I'll get it. Like I'll get it. Always talk.
Oh, for Matt? Yeah.
I know I had to.
Did you get that at the flea market? No, the shirt. Oh yeah, what monument? How'd you get her to come? Let's ask her again in about an hour. Let's ask her if she still feels lucky. Always a good move. He who has the keys, or she, usually dictates the action. I think I'd like another drink. I have the key. Well, I guess we're leaving. It's that stigma. The old back problem. Stupid stick. You need it in the shower. All right, everybody. I'd like to say hello to the lone Mets fan back there. I haven't seen one of those in quite a while. Nice to have you, sir. Right there. I like true believer over here. Right there. I woke up this morning and I was this tape will get dated, so I need to explain what point in the year we are. Hey, man. We are in, what is today? September 14th, 2019, and the Tigers and the Orioles are on a race for the bottom. And I woke up this morning and I turned on the internet because I was hoping the Tigers and the Orioles are playing, and I was hoping we lost. You know, because I want that #1 draft pick. And nope, we managed to be better than worse. What do you do? All right, since I have everybody's attention, let me go ahead and say this one more time in case you didn't hear me. We're probably going to get rained on about 11, and we're going to be on the far side of the moon, hopefully by the time we get there. If you have something in your car, you will probably want to go get that. I'm hedging on y'all that I'm not a paranoid person about weather, but it's that yellow and red color coming over the mountains, which is never good on the radar right here. So I don't know what to do. I'm really torn. I mean, if we get out there and it gets that bad, if it's blowing sideways, I mean, what y'all want me to do about it?
Keep walking.
Keep walking.
Double time.
Keep going.
Always, I don't know how other park rangers do it, but I've always struggled with weather and walks, and for the following reason. Number one, your bureaucrats have a reputation of being lazy. And if you give us half a chance, we'll be happy to be lazy. So I don't want to seem like we're lazy. So I thought to myself, Matt, you don't want to be lazy. So what's the barometer? The barometer for me as far as weather is, can you learn? And if you can't learn, what's the use in doing it? What is the use of me standing out here, and what's the use of putting you through it? So, you know, if it's 105 degrees and we got to cross Pickett's Charge, what's the use in dilly-dallying about it? You're not learning anything. You're all just suffering, just to say after you cool off, man, that was fun. You know, or number two, you know, if it's raining sideways, I mean, what could you possibly learn from that? So we're going to try to get through it, though. So, if you haven't learned, if you haven't read out here today, we are going to be following Kershaw's brigade. And they're South Carolinians. And I guess the first thing that I have to come to is what everybody always writes me about, is how do you pronounce Kershaw? Which I have met many people from South Carolina and asked them the exact same question, and they all pronounce it differently. So it's Kershaw, all right? Or however I pronounce it at the time. So let's talk about the big man himself. Well, actually, let me set up something else before we go from that. Let me set up the big picture. Always like that horn, whoever's phone that is right there. Why don't we do this? In one ways, we're very blessed today because this walk I don't do often because it's just physically a Herculean task. And I say that, and you won't see it today because most of the time we get out there and we're in grass up to our shoulders, you know, and just to get a path through there at times, the worst times I've seen, I would just follow the rest of the group by the grass moving up above. You know, I knew there was somebody in there somewhere, and if I kept hollering, they would eventually come out of there, hopefully, right there. Why don't we do this, though, because we can't see anything. I hate to move y'all so early. But let's walk a few yards out to the edge of these woods right here, and let's talk about the big picture. We're going to bring up Longstreet and his command. We're going to get down to Kershaw, and we'll go from there. Y'all. That's right. They play the same set every.
It's a little bit different. They actually played some of the stuff when they had the one dude, when Bruce Dickinson was away from the band or whatever, from Virtual X. They played a few songs from that on this tour.
When was that album? I didn't know he ever quit the band after the first lead.
Blaze Bailey or something like that was the lead singer for one album.
Okay, the first, right?
It was Virtual X was the name of the album, but they played Sign of the Cross from that.
I just thought I didn't know half of
Please,
it.
man.
I just thought I heard all the B-sides from Beast album. Maine? Maine?
Sorry? We're not from there, but we visited.
I heard it's good weather about 3 months.
We were there. We were there in November. It wasn't too bad.
It was terrible.
Don't you love it? You can tell a couple have been together a long time. People newly dating. It wasn't too bad. Guy says nothing. Been together a while. It was terrible. All right, I have to remember to bring you up. I like that jacket.
Well, our father.
Well, yeah. I've got a 100-year-old friend, and literally 100 years old, in Houston, Mississippi, and he's got clothes like that. He's given me a couple ties, though. They just don't make them like that anymore, you know? Countess Marie's or something like that. That's some good stuff. Boys, I probably saved my energy on that umbrella. Yeah, why not? All right, so let's first of all start out with hey, how are you? Shea Patterson. Whatever. I went to Old
Mississippi. I was gonna say Mississippi guy.
Yeah, flew the Michigan college plane down to Oxford. Harbaugh. That was interesting. All right. Okay, let's talk about big picture. I walked you all the way down here so you could see this. I hope, well, this is what it's designed for. I hope this battle walk shows you a lot of different angles which you've never seen before. Because obviously you probably never get out of here, or your spouse would never allow you to get out and walk across a pasture that's been, rained on by about a couple inches right here. All right, so that's what we're out to do, is to show you, to give you the story, number one, but number two, to tactically show you how it all unfolded. And that obviously incorporates a lot of the physical terrain. Has to come into play. You can read 1,000 books on any battle, but until you actually walk the ground, you're never going to understand what it's all about. people that write history are always at a loss, or at, I should say, a disadvantage to describe something. I mean, they could lose you in the minutia of describing ravines and little hills, and how do you ever write that into words so the reader would understand that? You can't do that very well with words. And so, you know, I mean, you gotta pan over. You gotta get that stuff right there. So, Kershaw, South Carolinians are going to line up on July 2nd. The first thing they do is they go through the ranks and they look for the lone Yankees fan that's in the crowd. I'll give you that, though. The hat looks worn. I'll give you that. All right. Big picture. July 2nd, 1863. I'm going to work my way back down to Kershaw. So those of you, I don't know who you are, but I got, 70 people out here, and I would say probably 50 of you know what's happening here, and the other 20 don't, all right? So here's for the 20 that don't know what's happening. We're talking about the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg, okay? The second day. There are 3 days in the Battle of Gettysburg. This is the second day. The first day results in the Confederate victory. You probably already know, even at the novice level, that both armies stumble into each other here at Gettysburg. It basically becomes a barroom brawl. Everybody calls their friends in. Eventually, the Confederates have more friends show up than the Union does at the end of the day. And they drive back the Union Army on the night of July 2nd, the evening of July 2nd. And the Union Army is pushed back to Cemetery Hill, which is that distant woods right over there. That's all Cemetery Hill. The Union Army is going to come up on the night of July 1st and the morning of July 2nd, and they're going to continue to extend their lines. Okay, eventually the Union line will take the shape of a fish hook, but in the way, thank you, ma'am, but you have to understand that the fish hook line is not always the fish hook line. Or in other words, if you had a fish hook, you would need a pair of pliers for what I'm about to describe, because we're about to kink it. Right here. Thank you. Iron Maiden. There are 7 Union Corps comprising the Army of the Potomac. 6 of those Corps commanders are West Point graduates. All right? The 7th Corps commander, who is in command, numerically speaking, of the 3rd Corps, is a non-West Point graduate named Dan Sickles. All right? Now, Dan Sickles, how about a round of applause for Dan Sickles? What will we do without Dan Sickles? People come up to me, I just find him just a hard man to study. I don't. I think he's prime entertainment. I like Dan Sickles. He's given us a lot to talk about, as you're about to see. As fate would have it, Dan Sickles his corps is positioned on the end of the Union lines. Okay? So what does that mean? Dan Sickles is supposed to be the left flank of the Union line. Remember, I'm opposite you if you're facing toward me. So the left, my left right here. Well, Dan Sickles is positioned, what can I see from here? Not much. But over this hill right here, and then take my words, and through the valley, to Grandma's house we go. Right over there is the Pennsylvania Monument in this general direction. All right? From the Pennsylvania Monument, basically where that distant tree line is right there, where you see the gap in the trees, that's where Dan Sickles is on the morning of July 2nd. Okay. Dan Sickles is a worried man, though. Dan Sickles looks at the terrain, and you have to remember that Dan Sickles has just become a Corps commander in 1863. And so he has only fought one battle as a Corps commander. To echo what I said earlier, he is a non-West Point graduate. He is a political general. So that means he has an even steeper learning curve to go up through. At the previous battle, some people would say that Dan Sickles learns from the fact that he is ordered to withdraw against protest. He protested from open ground, high ground around Chancellorsville. He subsequently withdraws his corps under orders. He redeploys them. The Confederates come in, occupy his old position artillery, Confederate artillery on that old position, and proceed to pummel his new position. Dan Sickles is a man that's learning on the job. On the morning of July 2nd, he's a worried man, because if you look out here toward that direction, you obviously have the peach orchard directly in front of you. That is the high ground, that little knoll right there, a hill. Dan Sickles is looking from back there at the Pennsylvania Memorial. He's looking up toward here, and his perception is that the ground in front of him is a better position to occupy than the one he has ordered. His original orders are basically to come out and form a straight line, connect his right flank, once again I'm opposite you, his right flank with the rest of the Union Army, which is around the Pennsylvania Memorial, and his left flank should be occupying that hill. If you look to the right, you'll see the big hill, that's Big Round Top. The one we can't see very well, but barely see the treetops, is Little Round Top, right over the edge, the tallest trees which you see there. So basically, he's supposed to make a straight line. How can you mess this up? All right, just make a straight line. Dan Sickles sends out a reconnaissance because he wants to know. This is a good thing. I do not criticize this. If you want information, don't sit there and guess. Go find out. I get so tired of my children wanting me to make a decision without giving me any information. How do I make a decision if you don't give me any information? This is not warfare right here. So, Dan Sickles sends out a reconnaissance. That's comprised of the United States sharpshooters in the 3rd Maine. Not to be confused with Josh. All right? Joshua. Those Union boys come out through here, and they probably, some maps actually have them making their way through here, right through where we are, or in this general vicinity, and then turning and heading to the north. Anyway, regardless, that's beyond our scope. When they get over to the Park Amphitheater, they should have shot it full of holes. But they didn't. But they keep on going through there, and they pass through the edge of the woods, and they think to themselves, man, this would be a nice spot to erect a monument. Why don't we fight here? And so they get into those woods over there, and seriously speaking, they stir up a hornet's nest when they run into some Confederates, Wilcox's Alabamians, who are coming into position. Long story short, they get into a firefight. They tumble back out of the woods because there's a lot more Rebs in there than they are. And they come tumbling out, and they go running back across this field, and they head back to Dan Sickles over there. And they report to Dan Sickles that, yeah, there are rebels coming into position in those woods out there. Dan Sickles has been trying, on his part, has been trying to get clarification from headquarters whether he can move his corps out and occupy the high ground in front. He did try to do that. Most people forget that. But when he cannot receive any clarification and his reconnaissance comes back, Dan Sickles decides to take the initiative and move his corps out in front of the rest of the Union Army. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be one of the more controversial decisions of the Battle of Gettysburg. And we're still talking about it today. So Sickles, with flags flying and drums beating and the bands playing, it was a beautiful sight, especially by the Union boys. They could see it up on Cemetery Ridge. They could see the entire 3rd Corps moving out. Beautiful. They come marching out through here, and they start to occupy the position. Basically, Sickles sets up in an inverted V. The front of his position would be at the peach orchard, where those bushes are directly in front of you. Now, I'm reversed from you. I can't say that too many times. His right flank would have been running along the highway over there, back toward town, toward Steinway Avenue. Okay? And it would eventually run out of men in front of the Cadore farm. His left flank would bend back from the peach orchard. We're getting into what we're going to be studying today. And it would run through that first set of woods you see over there, the thick set of woods, and it would meander through the gaps in the trees. That's basically the wheat field. This will make better sense once we walk over there. And it would end at what we now know is the base of Little Round Top at a place called Devil's Den. All right, what's the big picture here, though? Dan Sickles has around 10,000 men in his corps out here. His original orders were to occupy a front of approximately 1,800 yards. He has now moved out his corps, and his new position is 2,700 yards, give or take a few. So he has increased his frontage by a third from his original disposition, orders, I should say, and he has, I should say, the same amount of men to occupy a third of a longer position. You don't have to be a Gettysburg expert to figure out that he doesn't have as many men. He can't have a thicker line, if you will, that he would if he'd have taken the shorter route. And that's the problem with Dan Sickles' new position. Now let me say one thing before we move on. Just as Sickles, but we're studying the Confederates today. I think Sickles moves out. I cannot prove or disprove this, so don't take it to the bank, okay? But I think Sickles moves out to the Peach Orchard when he thinks the Confederates are over there, where the modern-day Park Amphitheater is. All right? Now, you watch what happens. That's when Sickles makes the decision to move out. Now, let's go to the Confederate side and see why this position is going to become somewhat untenable real quick here. On the Confederate side, once again, we're talking about the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. Robert E. Lee wants to get at the Union Army, so he sends out a reconnaissance of his own. He doesn't send out infantry, he sends out staff officers. And Captain Samuel Johnson, reportedly, well, nobody knows, but he's going to come down Seminary Ridge, and he's going to cross somewhere in here. Couldn't tell you the exact spot, but he's headed in this direction. And Samuel Johnson, on the early dawn, whatever that means, early dawn, he gets to the south end of the battlefield. When he gets to the south end of the battlefield, he claims to have gotten to Little Round Top. Anyway, he gets up there, wherever he got to, get the Gettysburg magazine out, all 60 issues of it, and you'll probably find a half dozen articles on Samuel Johnson over the years. You're probably a collector, aren't you, sir? So I'm missing the last 5. I need to get with you about that, some extra copies back there. You two. Again. Johnson comes back to Robert E. Lee, and he reports that Little Round Top is unoccupied. Now, we could sit here and debate that all day. I got it, but that's outside the scope of what we're doing. Based on that, ladies and gentlemen, Robert E. Lee makes a decision. He decides to take his corps that has been unengaged on the first day's battle, the first corps designated that way, by James, under the command of James Longstreet, who is his most seasoned, quote-unquote, war horse. He's the only corps commander he's got that has experience on that level. And he turns to Longstreet, and they bicker him back and forth all morning long. But eventually, Longstreet is ordered to come in his position and attack the Union left flank. Now, Longstreet is well known, is real late getting into position. And we could do a whole walk on that. I think Troy Harmon does do a whole walk on that, actually. Anyway, the corps is coming into position, and they're making their way up. And remember, Samuel Johnson goes out here, does this reconnaissance at early dawn. James Longstreet is not getting into position, not even getting here until around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So what does that mean? 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a whole lot of things can change in that amount of time. And the biggest thing, Lafayette McLaws is the lead division. Remember, corps are comprised of divisions. Lafayette McLaws' division is in the lead. They pull up here at the tower, the modern-day Longstreet Tower, and McLaws looks across the field, and what does he see?
Dan Sickles.
He sees Dan Sickles right over there. And this is actually the last thing he ever expected to do, to ever have right there. All right? I told y'all. Out through here. And so what he ends up doing, ladies and gentlemen, You can't be out here like that. Y'all need to get another hobby.
Walking's good for you.
Don't you fall on me. Boy, things have changed.
The raincoat theory didn't work.
And the raincoat theory, if I held it, maybe I would do it, right? Should I hold it? Maybe it'll quit raining. I'll hold it. Dan Sickles is in front of me. Why is that important? Why is that a big deal? It's going to set up everything we're going to be studying today. Dan Sickles is out here, and this is the last place James Longstreet ever expected to find Yankee forces. All right, so McLaws is up first, his subordinate, Longstreet's subordinate. And he gets up here, he's like, Longstreet's late, he's mad, etc. He's like, attack. McLaws is sending back word to the rear, to the boss. He goes, you need to come up here, we got a problem. Longstreet sends back word, I don't care what your problem is, attack. McLaws says, I can't attack. My orders are to attack up the Gettysburg Road. I cannot conform to those orders. Longstreet finally decides he'll come up here and look for himself. And when they get up here, when Longstreet gets here, he and McLaws ride out. They see the site I've already described to you, this big Union Corps sitting here. And no longer can the Confederate Army basically come out here. Can I see you for a minute? All right, put your arms out like that. If this is the Gettysburg Road right here, if this is the Gettysburg Road, hurry up, put your jacket on underneath. All right, you got great hair. Did anybody ever tell you that? All right, here's the Gettysburg Road. I'm not going to do you any good. It's going to be running like this. The Confederates are ordered, ladies and gentlemen, to get up here and basically cross. See where the road is? They're supposed to cross the road and wheel to the left and dress to the right. So we'll put your arms out again. The road doesn't move. What the Confederates are out to do is lock their flank onto the Gettysburg Road. It's a guide. All right, here's the infantry, here's the road. Here's the infantry, here's the road. The road, you don't move, road. The road is going to guide them. You know, you keep your flank tethered to the road doesn't move. That's how you guide several thousand men. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? All right, well, they can't do that anymore because Sickles is sitting there. And that's what Sickles would argue, that he thwarted the Confederate attack plan by moving out front. Who said that? Always somebody wanting to get on camera. Always. All right. Let me think what I want to do here. Longstreet therefore changes the assault plan, all right? So instead of having McLaws' division coming up in here, I like a man who can match. No, you're too big. Come over here. You're fine. I'll get you in a minute. All right. All right. So what was supposed to happen? This is divisions comprise corps, right? So 2 divisions in Longstreet's corps, McLaws and Hood. All right. So what's supposed to happen is McLaws goes first, comes out here, wheels around like this, like they put your arms out, and then Hood comes in. And he's going to come in and basically form up behind him, okay? And they're going to attack like this. Okay? It's all right. It's all right. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. What? All right, you two, you don't move. You two go back to where you were over there. All right. What Longstreet does instead, ladies and gentlemen, is he decides, instead of leading with McLaws, he decides to lead with Hood. All right, and the reason for that is the reason I walked you all the way out here, because this is what the battlefield will teach you. If you want to know why all your spouses are spending so much time out here on this battlefield studying all this, here is a glimpse of why that is happening. Because when McLaws and Longstreet go out here, look, you're seeing the exact same sight that they saw on July 2nd. That's what your ancestors' tax dollars got you, right here. This is the exact same sight. And what you can't see is the point I'm trying to make with you today. Longstreet can't see and doesn't know where the end of the Union line is. We know it's at Devil's Den. He doesn't know that. So what he decides to do is alter the plan to a small extent, and instead of having McLaws go first, he's going to have Hood go first. All right, so what does that mean? Hood is going to come out by himself, pivot, and he's going to try to find the end of the Union line and drive it in. Right? As long as they aren't crying, they're fine. Okay? And so McLaws is going to sit here until Hood finds the end of that line and come in. One thing I would point out to you, and this goes into Kershaw, I'm getting down to that point. Longstreet is tactically in control of McLaws' division. That doesn't mean he relieved McLaws, but Longstreet, let me put it another way, is physically present down here. And he's telling McLaws what to do. So if there's any problems that you don't like about the Confederate movement, or lack thereof, on July 2nd, you can talk to James Longstreet about that once you get to heaven. If he's in there. After Gettysburg. But I bet his penance is just watching the Gettysburg movie over and over again. Where he has to like look at that bad beard on him. He turns to his old soldier. He goes, "This looks nothing like me." Okay. All right. So Hood is going to go first. McLaws is going to be held back by Longstreet. That's not how the original plan was supposed to be. All right, so we're going to go to McLaws' division. So Hood's division is out there. They would have been sweeping across. If we would have been here on July 2nd, you would have seen thousands of Confederate soldiers coming out of that wood line down there by that distant house. What is that? The Snyder House, I believe. Am I correct on that? All right. The Snyder House. Sliders on down. That's what you get for thinking. That's actually, seriously though, that's how I remember it. That's the only reason I remember. Slider, Snyder, I can remember that, all right? So, I'm bad on housing. So anyway, you would have seen thousands of Confederates coming down through here. And you would have spent, if you would have been a Confederate soldier, you wouldn't have been standing right here. But if you were watching, yeah, you would have seen Union artillery firing to the south, just tearing up row upon row of earth and men and etc. It had been loud, to say the least. So McLaws' division is sitting here. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, give me 4 more. I need. All right. Okay, we're going to come up here. You may want to come around the other end. It may look better on the other side. Let's line up. I want 2 in front and 2 in the back. Go back. I don't care. Line up here behind there. I don't care. I'll take you either way. All right. It looks like y'all going behind. All right. Here, you line up behind him. And you line up behind him. That's what I want. All right. On board, all right. Okay. Let's take it down another notch. Corps are comprised of divisions. I'm taking it down. Divisions are comprised of brigades. All right? So these 4 gentlemen right here comprise the 4 brigades of McLaws' division. All right? And so, it is the rotating man. If you haven't watched Iverson and O'Neill yet, it is the rotating man All right, so let's have him rotate. The 4 brigades that comprise, I'll wheel him around, that comprise McClaw's division are, would you like to introduce us?
Yeah. Paul Sams, William Wofford, William Barksdale, and Joe Kershaw.
All right. Okay, that are the 4 brigades. So, what we have here, Barksdale, Kershaw, Wofford, Sims. Any questions? All right, right here. But look how Longstreet sets up his formation. He's got 2 brigades in front. He's got 2 brigades behind. All right, he has mass to his assault. He didn't spread them out. If you go to the next division up the line, Anderson, you know, he had 1,800 yards to cover. He only had 5 brigades. He couldn't do this. I will commend Longstreet. I think it's a good deployment, what I'm trying to say. All right, so McClaw's is getting ready to move forward. Hood's division has stepped off. They're swinging out. Now, what the Confederates are doing that day is basically they're in an echelon attack, which means they're like a row of falling dominoes. In other words, the extreme right brigade of Hood's division will be Law's Alabamians. They step off. When they step off, they trigger the next brigade to their left, which is going to be the Texas Brigade, Robertson's Texans. And when the Alabamians step off, the Texans step off, right? And it just rolls like a falling row of dominoes that you push over. It rolls from the south to the north until eventually it comes here. Now there is a lag time. This is all not being done like etc. The reason there is a lag time is because Longstreet is holding the puppet strings literally with these 4 brigades. And there is a delay. I don't know how long. But eventually the left flank of Hood's division gets out there and they start getting hit. And they summon reinforcements. Law by this time, Brigadier General Law, will be in command of the division. Hood is knocked out. Never underestimate how much that cost the Confederacy on July 2nd, Hood being wounded. But Hood is already wounded, and Law has to come off Big Round Top or somewhere in that vicinity, come all the way up here and try to take command of the division, which he has no experience doing. We have accounts of Law, though, one of the few moments we have of him riding up here and exchanging words with Kershaw, and probably McClaw's too. I don't know how he would do it. But Kershaw right here is called in to support the left flank of Hood's division, and he steps off right through here. Okay, here we're getting into Kershaw. I'm going down the brigade level. This is who we're following today. All right, this guy right here. The nice hair. That's weird. Right there. No. Before and after? I'm not far behind.
Right there. You got
Oh, yeah.
All right, Mike, I passed over you, Mike. Don't worry about it.
Daddy, what happened to your hair? And I always tell him, go ask your mother. All right. You look at this. This is who we're following. Now, this first big picture, and you want to understand what Joseph Kershaw, and I'm going to give you the background on him and getting into the program. If you're Kershaw, point that way. If you're Kershaw and you step out and you're headed right through here, you're right on the left flank where we're standing. What are your expectations to be happening? What are you expecting him to do? Yes. Put your arms out, will you? Like that. Face that way. Don't worry about me. Now you put your arms out. All right, right here. You need him to step off so your left flank doesn't just swing in the air. Look at all those Yankees at right angles to you. Right over there. Kershaw is expecting him to step off and cover his left flank. All right, any questions? Who's on the left? This is Barksdale, okay? Sims and Wofford. All right? I hate the order you put these in. Sims, Wofford, Barksdale, Kershaw. Kershaw, Barksdale, Wofford, Sims. The rotating man. Sims, Wofford, Barksdale, Kershaw. You're still smart because I didn't choose you, aren't you? Sims, Wofford, Barksdale, Kershaw. Any questions? All right. How about a round of applause for the amazing rotating man? Need a new hat, though. Maybe you could stand over there with the Yankee fan. Where'd he go? Oh, he covered his hat up. All right, no wonder I can't see. No wonder I can't see. Any questions?
Where was General Lee all this happening?
That's a good question. It's hard to say. He's probably back at Seminary Ridge or in that time. We know in the morning time he goes and visits Ewell over on the left flank. The traditional account is that he and Longstreet have a conference. General Lee goes over to, he hasn't made a decision. General Lee rides over to the left flank to see what's happening over there. He doesn't. He comes back. Ewell says he doesn't have a favorable position to attack from. He turns to Longstreet and says, "You're it." What I don't know, the big question, and I can't figure out, is if Longstreet was under orders to get into position before General Lee went to see Ewell or after. And that's a big bone of contention, because if he was told beforehand, which I don't know if I ever prove or otherwise or disprove, then Longstreet is really tardy on July 2nd. If he doesn't have the direct orders until after General Lee gets back, then that kind of gives him a little bit more leeway. One of those enduring mysteries right here. Any other questions? Matches your coat real well.
Questions?
Yes.
Yeah. If my memory's correct, early that morning, in the darkness, am I remembering right that Lee sent out mounted reconnaissance
Yes.
over to the Round Tops?
Yes.
But I don't remember what they came back with.
They came back with the intelligence that the Round Tops were unoccupied. And when Johnson gets to Seminary Ridge, all the big generals are in conference with Lee, and he comes up and makes a report. And Lee is seated at a table, and Johnson comes up behind him, and he leans over Lee, and he says on the map, "This is where I got to, it's unoccupied." And General Lee turns back around to him and faces the captain. If you can imagine General Robert E. Lee facing you as a mere captain in the Confederate Army. And he says, General Lee looks at him and he says, "Did you get here? Did you get there? Did you get there?" And Johnson says, "Yes, I got there." And so Lee said, "All right, this is what we're going to do." But the whole point is, I don't know what time Johnson's there. I mean, you can read 1,000 different theories on it, but it's early dawn, whatever that means. And Johnson says the usual delays were encountered in finding headquarters again. Well, what's that mean? Give me a time there, buddy. He doesn't though, so that's lost to history. So he gets back there, 7, 8 o'clock. Some people might say 6. He reports to General Lee. And Lee starts formulating that plan. What do you think about that?
Where's headquarters from here?
Straight down this woods. If you follow these woods, you eventually come to the seminary, and he's right in there. He's probably at the seminary. Once again, nothing's 100% here at Gettysburg. My friend Carlton puts him back behind Seminary Ridge, some spot back on Green Hill or something like that. Have to ask him. I don't know. Any others? All right, so we're going to take it down. We're going to follow this guy, Kershaw. Okay? Now, 8 years. Huh? Interesting. All right, let's talk about the man. Joseph Brevard Kershaw was 41 years old at the time of the battle. Historian Douglas Southall Freeman used the following words with him, quote, pious, intelligent, a clear blonde of high-bred, clean-cut features. He had the bearing of command and a clear voice that seemed to inspire courage when it was raised in battle. When I think of Joseph Kershaw, I always think, I know this is not fair, but I always think of Rock Hudson in The Undefeated. That's how I picture Joseph B. Kershaw right there. That gentleman right there agrees with me. It had to be Rock Hudson, except he had blonde hair on him right there. Kershaw hails from Camden, South Carolina, and was a lawyer by trade. Kershaw had gained combat experience from the Mexican War, though, and had commanded a militia regiment at Fort Sumter, which later became the 2nd South Carolina. He was promoted to brigadier general in February 1862. His superior, Division Commander General Lafayette McLaws, described Kershaw as a very cool, judicious, and gallant gentleman. Is that not Rock Hudson? At Gettysburg, Kershaw's brigade consisted of 5 regiments and 1 battalion of infantry. Right here. I guess you gentlemen are feeling left out. Right here. All right, we'll try this. And you too, I guess, there, huh? Jet fan. Little boy. Y'all going back. You two, the next 4, come on up. Or 5, I don't care. Who's the other 5 before I have it used? You want to get in, Jet? Joe Namath, come on, man. If I'd have lost to Buffalo, I'd be kind of skittish too. Now, come on. Just line up, straight lines. All you got to do. I mean, straight line. Y'all line up shoulder to shoulder. All right, who'll hand that you? How about that big fella? All right, come on over here. Step on in. He with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I get it. You two aren't cool anymore. Oh, how old are you?
Oh, I'm 14 years old.
14. All right. I've been noticing my 11-year-old's been slinking out of the car lately. Daddy, don't you blow that horn when I get out of the car. 14. How about that? You never know. Look what you got to look forward to. Oh boy. Okay, so the original brigade consisted of the 2nd, the 3rd, the 7th, and the 8th South Carolina Infantry. These units have been through most of the major engagements in the early war period, including 1st Manassas, Savage Station, that's part of the 7 Days campaign, Malvern Hill, that's part of it too, Maryland Heights, I think that's when McLaws invest Harper's Ferry, and the Battle of Sharpsburg, otherwise known as Antietam. By December of '62, the brigade had been augmented by the 3rd and 15th South Carolina Infantry, and they fought together at the Stonewall and Fredericksburg. On the battlefield, these 5 units right here, these 5 units are going to be numbering approximately 2,183 men. All right, so let's do it the hard way. From left to right, coming out would be the 8th South Carolina. It's under the command of Colonel James Hennigan, 41 years old, from the Marlborough District. I suppose that's where a lot of tobacco came from. Former state legislator and longtime sheriff, promoted from lieutenant colonel. He'd been in command from May of '62. He's got 300 men present in 12 companies. I don't know why he'd have 12. Little guy right here. Now let's swap out. You come over here. You stand right there. You stand over here. 3rd South Carolina Battalion. A battalion is about the half the size of a regiment. All right? Lieutenant Colonel William G. Rice, 31 years old, a native of Union District, graduate of University of South Carolina. When I say USC, that's what I mean. He had studied law, but he had not finished. He severely wounded at Turner's Gap, that's part of the South Mountain Battlefield, in 1862, but crawled to safety and did not return to the regiment until June 29th at Chambersburg. He caught up with them when they were going into Pennsylvania. He's got 200 men, 300, 200. Haven't seen a lot of combat, that's why they're that big. 2nd South Carolina, Colonel John Kennedy. Check this guy out. He's 23 years old. He's a colonel. He's a former lawyer and a militia officer, graduate of USC. During the war, he was seriously wounded 6 times and hit 15 times by spent balls. Whoever his saint is, I would like also. 3rd South Carolina, Colonel James Nance. Do not get confused. This is the 3rd South Carolina Battalion. This is the 3rd South Carolina Infantry Regiment. I got 2 threes. 2 threes in the lineup. The 3rd was under Colonel James Nance. He was absent in 6, so Colonel Robert C. Moffett. 27 years old, already wounded twice in the war. 406 men. Right here. 7th South Carolina. Colonel David W. Aiken, 35 years old, a native of Winnsboro, graduate of USC. Resume included newspaper editor, college professor, and planner. He's elected colonel in May of 1862. Severely wounded at Antietam, and he has 400 men here, 408. All right, last one. I don't focus on this one a lot because we move them quickly. Best thing ever happened to you is she turned out to be a girl. Otherwise, you'd be rooming with her. That would be even worse. You can count your blessings right there. Because you know your parents would have made that 3rd bedroom into an office. That's exactly what would have happened. With them right there. You get pictures where Bob goes. All right, get pictures. Right there. Bookending them right here.
All right,
This is the 15th South Carolina.
Although I'm 16 going on 17.
When's your birthday?
October.
17.
Gonna be 17.
Oh, you're older. Oh, she's older. Okay. Oh. Okay. All right. 17 is the perfect age. All right, I learned it the hard way. There's a big difference between 17 and 18. All right, 17, they still call your parents. 18, they keep you. And I guarantee it, that's the way it works. All right, 15th South Carolina, under the command of Colonel William de Saucier, and later under the command of William Gist. De Saucier was 45 years old, but going on 17. He's from Columbia. He was a graduate of USC. He had the most experience of any of the colonels. De Saucier had raised the company in the Mexican War. He had served as a captain on the western frontier, and he returned to South Carolina to defend the sovereignty of his state. In 1861, he wasn't going to let the home folks get run over. His promotion to general was pending at the time of the battle. He has 448 men available to him to command. Now let's go ahead. I think this is where I covered. Right here. So this is the lineup. We're quickly going to lose the 15th. Let me get out here and get a few feet so y'all can see around the corner though before I cover that. All right, you kids. Hello, I'm over here. You kids, need to remember your lineup. All right, I got the big kids bookending it, but you four, when I call you up, we're just gonna, y'all just keep somewhat together. All right, we're gonna walk a few yards out in here, and I'm gonna do it again, is what I'm telling you. Right? Are we cool? All right. We're gonna try to do that. All right, so we're gonna get started. We are approximately, ladies and gentlemen, on the left center of Kershaw's brigade, South Carolinians. We're going to go down through the field. This is the easiest walk I've ever had doing this. This is usually, like I said, full of something. You know, I think the worst we had out here was when it had that, not rye, but, what's the name of that stuff? It's maroon color. It got little bitty beads on it. Sorghum, yeah. At least we don't have any corn out through here. So the right, what I'm telling you is Kershaw's brigade would have extended easily up toward the Snyder house right over there. All right, and they would have been coming out. Now you can imagine all that artillery has been focused on Hood's division. Look, that is approximately, how far is it from here to the peach orchard? 600 yards, maybe something like that. That's nothing for a Civil War cannon. That's in very accurate range. What's going to happen when the South Carolinians come out of that wood line? They're going to start getting at them right here. All right. Any questions? Let's walk on out. We're going to get about halfway out in this field. I'm going to stop y'all again, and I'm going to show y'all from a distance what Kershaw's advance would have looked like. So let's get going. What that was from. It's a tight place to be, but the Union artillery is, you know, one battery may be positioned like this, another one like this. You know, they're all curvy through there, depending on the terrain. So no, they don't suppress them, and that's really true to form. The Confederate artillery rarely got the upper hand on the Union. You can just always count that. I mean, if you know nothing, just. If you ever have to sound smart, just say, oh, Union artillery is superior. You'll be on safe ground. Believe me. Redneck shooting a cannon. Told you.
Play it again.
All right, so take a look, take a gander behind you. This is where we came from. Look at where the tower is. Look at where, over here. Now I told you that the, can I get the kids to line up again real fast? Where's my bookend? Where's my big kid? All right, here comes brother and sister. In love to the last. They hug once a year at Christmas. That's only for family pictures. All right, just line up how you were. You get on the right over here. You're on this end, okay? All right, come on, Joe Namath. You stand right here. You seen Susie Colbert lately? Where's those?
You lost one.
Mark.
Who was the other?
You're missing more than the fourth.
Is that you? Is that you?
That's him.
All right. So she, if you haven't picked up on it, she hates being here. So we're gonna kill her off. No, don't run so fast. All right. So basically, what happens? Let's go through it again. If I can do it correctly. You have the 8th South Carolina. You have the 3rd South Carolina Battalion. You have the 2nd South Carolina. You have the 3rd South Carolina. You have the 7th South Carolina, and you have the 15th right here. So the 15th is on the right flank. Okay, so they're coming out of that wood line, and the 15th is somewhere over there. Okay? And that's where the modern, they say it was Fraser's battery, not with a Z, with an S. Fraser's battery, which was right over there. It's exact. If you want to go find it after this tour, you're welcome to it, but I'm going to go get some clean clothes on. The Fraser's battery is apparently, I don't know what they're encountering, but De Saucier, when he gets up here, is going to run, slam into the rear of a Confederate battery. And so what ends up happening is he gets delayed. All right, and by the time he gets his men through that battery, these other 5 units, you 5 step forward, you stay there, and you other 5 step forward. The rest of the brigade is already moving forward right here, so he gets cut off. Well, meanwhile, Sims' brigade steps out, and they're behind. Don't ask me exactly how this occurred, but Sims' brigade comes up here, and they're advancing a few hundred yards behind, and apparently he's so delayed, the 15th is, that they block him out. In other words, the 15th gets pushed out, probably more like this. The Georgians pass through them, the 15th gets cut. There's no room for them. They can't get around them like that. Have you ever tried to get into a marching band halftime performance midway through the program? That's about what they're trying to do. If you've ever been in the band. Try to understand. They gave you the pep talk before you came out. All right. So the 15th, we'll come back. I'll refer to them briefly at the end of the tour, but they basically get thrown over here in front of the Rosewoods. Everybody make sense? So that's why when I line them up again, she's not going to be here. Does that make sense? Can you applaud? Can we applaud for the kids? Are you happy about that? All right. I always like to make the youngsters happy as much as possible. Y'all, not so much. All right. So, look at where we're coming from. Let me give you a few stories. Ace, South Carolina. Ace, South Carolina. Quote, as the regiment stepped off, a shell crashed into 2 companies of the 8th, causing numerous casualties. Roughly around 16, if you can imagine one cannonball knocking out that many people, including 25-year-old Captain Thomas E. Powell, whose right leg was, quote, swept off by the shell. The line wavered and stopped in confusion and shock. And in the midst of all this din, Powell's cheering voice was heard above the fray. Forward, boys, forward. Powell died in a Gettysburg field hospital on July 22nd. They must have got a tourniquet on him, but he died anyway. All right, 7th South Carolina. 7th South Carolina. Yep, he's right. Congratulations. The right of the brigade is able to become Colonel David Aiken. Thank you for remembering that. Quote, orders had been issued not to display the colors as we were supposed to be in ambush, though a constant and continued fire of artillery had been made over our line at points in our rear, doing us no harm. Before attention, quote unquote, was called, the enemy seemed to have discovered our position, and their shell became very destructive, doing far more damage to our reserves and the battery of artillery than to Kershaw's brigade. As we rose from our lying position behind the stone wall, Sergeant A.D. Clark, bearing the colors of the 7th Regiment, unfurled them thoughtlessly. And in less than a minute thereafter, a shell exploded in his front, killing 3 and wounding the rest of the color guard. Nothing daunted, though, and we passed over the stone wall, ascending the slope of Rose's clover field. Not more than 40 yards from the stone wall, Lieutenant W.A. Rufflin was killed, shot through the head. Probably a piece of shrapnel or something like that. All right, here we go. This is a rehash. But this is the only known account. I'm going to read this to you verbatim because this is the only known account I have of what the Confederates were supposed to do on July 2nd from a brigade level. And it comes from Kershaw writing back and forth with the first Gettysburg Park historian named John Batchelder. If you ever hear John Batchelder, you'll now know who they're talking about. They call it the Batchelder Papers. The Batchelder Papers. The Batchelder Papers.
Papers? Who's that?
What time frame are you looking at there?
1876. Want to even get better? March 20th. All right. In a letter to Batchelder,
Yeah, I already did it. I already cut
Kershaw says the instructions given to him from both Longstreet and McLaws personally. Quote, Sims was in reserve 150 yards behind me to move with me, preserving that interval. The directions were to dress to the right and wheel to the left. To dress to the right and wheel to the left. I understood it to mean we were to swing around as we could towards the left, probably with the view of gaining a line resting upon Little Round Top on the right and the peach orchard on the left. All right, so what does that mean in practical terms right here? What you get, since you get out of the line, you get to hold that. All right? If you wheel to the left and dress to the right, I put you here for a reason, because you're the oldest and you can follow simple instructions. If you're going to go to prison, this is going to be coming real handy, all right? Simple instructions. All right. Right here. Been somewhere too, ain't you? All right. We're going to wheel to the left and dress to the right. So he's not going to move. You're going to take little bitty steps. That shouldn't be a problem. You're going to take medium-sized steps. And you two are going to take big steps. But what we're going to do is, we're going to swing it like a door. We're going to wheel to the left. So you understand you're not moving. We're going to swing it out, though. All right, real slow. All right. Wheel. Y'all start marching. You just march in place. Come on out. Wheel to the left. There you go. Come on toward me. Form up on me. That wheel's to the left. All right, y'all stop right there. That's a wheel. Okay, so the whole brigade's supposed to be wheeling. All right, now what is the second half of that order? Dress to the right. So that means that everybody, if there's a gap in the line, they're not going to dress to the left over here toward 14. They're going to dress toward the right, which is down here by the 7th. All right, so any gaps in the line, they will be conforming to this. On a larger scale, if they had help on the right, if they can do with it, if there's any doubt, then they would pivot. The whole brigade line would dress down. Dress to the right, wheel to the left. Dress to the right, wheel to the left. They're basically conforming. They're making they want the whole Confederate line to wheel, as I've already shown you, but they want more weight going toward the Round Tops or the east. That big hill which you see over there. Any questions about that?
Are they doing this wheeling maneuver on this side of the road or the other side of the road, or both?
They're going to do it on the other side of the road, I think. And you'll see in a short amount of time why they probably want to do it on the other side of the road. Look at it. They're wide open. Now, the right flank of Kershaw probably have a little shelter in that ravine right there. Or you could say they couldn't see what was coming. I don't know which one you'd rather have. But once we cross the road, you'll see, where's that guy, Desultory? You'll see undulating terrain as soon as we cross the road over here.
Is the 7th aware of Roberson on their right?
No, no, they're not. No. Any others?
They end up linking up with Anderson.
That's right. I wasn't going to correct it.
How many minutes would it take from the tree line to the road?
You know what? I have never seen the official Gettysburg National Military Park raincoat. I have never seen this. I did not. Where are you going? I have never seen this before, and I'd like to capture this for posterity. Now, what was the question?
How long would it have taken Kershaw to go from the tree line to the road?
Oh, quick. A lot quicker than we're going, I assure you. No, I don't know minute-wise, sir, and a serious answer, but they'd be moving. They'd be moving real fast. I mean, look how close they are. and they'd be firing. This is well within canister range for the Union artillery. They'd be moving. They don't have to be pushed. They know they're veteran soldiers. Yes.
Yes. You said at the beginning that the Union cannons were facing the south.
Both. What I said was both. They got them facing toward, what is that, the west, and facing toward the south. Just look at the monument, so you'll see it better. We're going to go through there. You'll see what I'm talking about. But you're going to lose sight of this side of the peach orchard, the west side of the peach orchard. Keep that in mind. We're going to be making a big circuitous route. So just give me a few minutes, and we'll get around there and make better sense.
So the south facing position then wasn't out of any like specific information they had. It was just like a precautionary.
The south-facing position, as far as artillery, is done out of necessity because Sickles doesn't have enough infantry to cover it. His line's too long.
Okay.
That's why you don't see any infantry regiment monuments along Wheatfield Road in that area. Sickles didn't have any men. It's a tribute. He didn't mean it this way, but it's or the War Department didn't mean it this way, but it's basically a living testament to how thin his line was. Indirectly. She's doing okay. Get her picture. What do they say in the British Navy? All right, never mind. The flogging will continue until morale improves. All right, let's go forward then. Let's all gather. I'll wait on everybody. We're all going to gather up at the highway together, though, and we're going to cross it. It's on top of a hill. I don't think we'll have any trouble. We'll all cross together, okay? These old rebels, they don't know.
I can see where the decision was made.
Have a good time. All right. Hold her upright. It'd be a first. That baby comes today, I want it named after me.
It is a boy.
Oh, it is? We'll name him Matthew Kershaw.
I like it. How's your first date?
Well, it's got to come out. That's the good thing.
Thinking positive thoughts.
Yes, yes. Who's going to boil the water? I've never understood why we need boiled water, but apparently we need boiling water. All right. So look at where we came from. Look at how they're coming across through here, and look at behind you. Look at that ravine right through here. Now you'll see in just a minute. I think that as I get you up to the barn, or what's left of the barn, when we get up here, we'll start talking about the 3rd and 7th South Carolina. I think the right flank of Kershaw, the 3rd and 7th, is in that ravine right there. I'm pretty sure about it, actually. You probably, if you wanted me to take an even bigger guess, I would think the 7th's on that far hill, and the 3rd is roughly about right here. Now that's all approximate right there. So that leaves what? Another 3 units, 8th, but the 3rd Battalion and the 2nd South Carolina, somewhere right through here, right in this area. So the poor 8th South Carolina is getting hammered from over here. I hope whoever that y'all all jumbled up, but the gentleman who asked me about the artillery facing 2 different directions, now you can start seeing it. Here's the peach orchard. Now you can see one of the artillery monuments over there to the left of the tree. Now you see how they're pointing south. So when the South Carolinians come over the top right here, the 8th South Carolina on the extreme left has got to be getting blistered. We'll cover that more in detail in just a minute. The batteries over there in the peach orchard area included Ames, Hamptons, and Harts, along with the 5th Massachusetts and the 9th Massachusetts artillery batteries. The 3rd South Carolina, probably in this ravine. If I was an animal, I'd probably be in that ravine too. As the regiment advanced toward the Rose buildings, a rabbit suddenly appeared from the clover and brush and hopped away as fast as it could go. One soldier called out, "Go it, old fellow, and I would glad to be going with you if I hadn't a reputation to sustain." That's pretty cool, isn't it? You see that a lot. You know, obviously Shelby Foote did that when on Pickett's Charge, and that's a true account too, and I've heard that again from another Georgia Red. I think Wright's Brigade, a veteran, noted something similar to that. So it must have been a running joke within the Confederate Army at the time, you know. What'd I pick up? All right. Okay, so we're not going far now. Let's go up to the barn and let's trying to get you a vantage point. Cameron, let's take them to the right of the barn between there and the house, okay? All right. Called a batch elder. Look at where we came from. Now look at where the ravine is. All right, we're standing in the Rose farmyard. Quote, "In advancing line of battle," Kershaw wrote, "recklessly the line was broken to pass the obstacles encountered at Rose's farm." This is something you probably never thought about, but this is not a board game. Men do not magically just go through the hex and not have to worry about the house that's there. It's a physical house, and these are physical men. This is the real deal. So they've got obstacles. Now, how do you get around that? Continuing his quote, "The batteries near the orchard," now you can start to see them. "The batteries near the orchard concentrated a terrific fire on us at that point. I well remember the clatter of the grape against the barn," right here, "against the barn wall and the house as we passed. The 7th and 3rd Regiments," that's the right flank, "the 7th and 3rd Regiments fell promptly into line again as soon as the obstacles were passed. For a short time, the left wing halted about the walls and the fence left of Rose's, and then at the order moved on to attack the battery." Right there. So what that means is that the brigade has got 5 units out here. It's going to split. The 3rd and the 7th are headed that way, toward those woods. And somewhere in here, I suppose it's right here in front of us, the left wing, comprising the 8th, the battalion, and the 2nd South Carolina, are going to start to wheel to the left and start going up through here to attack those batteries. Once again, Joseph Kershaw, "The left of the 7th Regiment," y'all remember this because this is going to come back to play. I'm going to cover this in more detail in a few minutes. "The left of the 7th Regiment passed to the right of the stone dwelling." So that means the 7th South Carolina went around it. Where did he go? All right. And the 3rd Regiment went to the left. The 3rd, from having further to march, a little in rear and to the right or south of the Rose Lane. Well, here's Rose Lane right here. We just walked down it, and here's to the right, right over here. So the 3rd South Carolina is literally coming right through here. Right through here. 7th on the other side of the house. Now, if you're going to put that many men, I already read off the number of men in them. They couldn't have been in a good formation. Jumbled down. They probably had run from the wood line over there, and they probably closed up over here. Like that. Coming through here, and they would have, I don't know if they've straightened their alignment out yet. All right. After passing the obstacles of the house, fence, etc., we passed into a ravine at the point that I was at the left of the 7th. So that means he goes around the other side of the house. All right. So what we're going to do is, what did Cameron find out? We cool or not?
I got through right here.
I'm going to refrain from making the smart comment, Cameron. This is going to be a brief stop right through here, all right? We're going to go through that gate where Cameron is over there. We're going to go around through here, and I want you to take a look behind the house. Actually, I don't know if I'd be better off. I don't know. We'll just go with the original plan. I was going to take you in the yard. Y'all rather go in the farmyard?
Yep.
Y'all ever been over there? Let's go down and open that gate up, Cameron, and we'll go in there briefly. You can have some hog. Yeah. I saw some reenactors one time at Monocacy, and we were on the backside of nowhere. Nobody was coming to see us for their anniversary, and they had a hog. I don't know where they got it, but they had a hog, and they brought it out there, and the way that they cooked it, they didn't have it in the pit. They weren't doing anything, but they're reenactors. They took the pig and left the hide on one side of it and just threw the hide side into the fire and let it cook on the coals. And when they wanted a piece of meat, they just take a knife over there and just cut it off. You can see it bubbling. And that pig hide won't, they make welding gloves out of that stuff. It ain't going to hurt. That hide ain't going to peel. But I imagine, I don't know where they got that from, but I imagine that's how the Civil War soldiers would have done. They're not going to dig a hole. Too much work. Cook it. Get it done. Practicable. All right. 7. Yeah, it was, and it took me years to get practicable down. And I like to turn to my kids, and I like to say to them, I do not feel that would be practicable at this time.
The operative word.
That's right. For the future 17-year-old, that will not be practicable at this time. What did the cop say to Matt? I would like to get out. That is not practicable at this time. Now the 7th and 3rd South Carolina lines had overlapped as the lines continued down through the ravine. Remember this. This is key. In order to alleviate the congestion, Kershaw ordered the 7th Regiment to move to the right. All right, and that's going to be important right here. Let me line this up. Hold that 1 second there. All right. I don't know how good this is going to show up in this cramped position right here. But basically, the way I look at it is the 3rd comes out, put your arms out, and the 7th, they come out from behind these buildings and they're overlapping each other. See my arm here, see his arm here? Their flanks are overlapping each other. They need to alleviate this. So how do you alleviate this? Kershaw simply orders the 7th Regiment to halt, face to the right, and march this way to create more room, and then he again advances out through there. But he orders the 7th Regiment to advance by the right flank. Keep that in mind, because we'll come back to that in just a second. Now, this is where I don't want to confuse you on the tour, but I took a few minutes to come out here, so I try not to confuse you. The 3rd and 7th are going to attack what is known as during the battle as the Stony Hill. That's that group of woods right there. What I'm going to do right now, though, is I've got a fence. That's 3 syllables in the South. Fence. All right? Oh, come on, that's funny. All right, the 3rd and 7th are going to attack through here, but because of the modern day fence, all right, with literally wire fence over there, I don't want to take y'all. No, that ain't gonna happen. A lot of y'all city folk, y'all ain't used to going through a barbed wire fence. We ain't gonna do that. What happened, Matt? Why did you take 70 people through a barbed wire fence? Do you think that was the practicable thing to do? So what we're going to do, tell me, now raise your hand, tell me if this doesn't make sense. I'm going to break off from this engagement, all right, and we're going to follow the left flank. Remember the other 3 units that were wheeling to attack the batteries? We're going to wheel through here ourselves, and we're going to head up toward the artillery, almost to the peach orchard. We're going to cover the left flank, and I'm going to come all the way back around. We're going to walk to those woods. It's basically where I'm going to end the tour. is over there in those woods. But I'm going to break off from the 3rd and 7th, and we're going to pick them up later, okay? So there's going to be a gap. We're going to forget about these guys for a little while. There are 2 separate actions then. Just keep looking. You nod, I'll quit talking, all right? There are 2 distinct separate actions now for Kershaw's brigade, all right? You have the right flank going that way, and you got the left flank going that way. The left flank is conforming to the original orders. Wheel to the left and dress to the right. Kershaw can't wheel the whole brigade though, because his orders are not practicable anymore. There are Yankees right here on this hill. He can clearly see them. So Kershaw tactically makes a decision to split the brigade. He makes the best of both worlds. All right, and he sends his right flank this way and his left flank toward the batteries to take.
Is this part of Sickles' line in these trees here?
Yes, part of Sickles' line, and by this, within a few minutes, if they aren't already there, portions of the 5th Corps will be showing up there too, in that area.
So are they infantry or still artillery on that hill?
All infantry on the hill and all artillery where we're going.
Okay.
So Kershaw wants to take out the artillery with his left flank and keep the infantry off of them with his right flank. Yes, very good question. So you've got, let me see if this answers. You've got Union infantry in the peach orchard, Union artillery, Union infantry on the Stony Hill.
Okay. At what point did they come under fire from the Union infantry? Like how far into the maneuver?
Well, let's take the left flank first. They're going to be under fire pretty quick. You're a lot closer to the peach orchard than you think, but you'll see that in just a minute.
So the Sickles line extend beyond Stony Hill?
Yes, it goes to the Devil's Den.
Okay.
All right, and they're fighting. Texas is fighting down there at this point. You know, the Georgians are coming up. What was that brigade? Bennings.
Rock Benning.
Did I talk about
Yeah.
you know, Arkansas, all them. So you've got Hood's divisions coming through Rose Woods and Devil's Den and attacking Little Round Top.
Okay, so he has to maintain his line spread out.
Right.
Same way from the start.
Well, yeah, let me answer it another way. I won't line the kids up again, but you remember the division formation was 2 brigades in front and 2 brigades behind. When they start making gaps, when gaps start forming, that's when Longstreet's alignment is fortuitous for the Confederates, because the rear brigades come in and fill in the gaps.
Okay.
In other words, you know, if they started out as the 2 brigades right here, eventually, you know, there's going to be gaps open up right through, and those rear brigades will just come up and fill them in. You know, and so it works out pretty good, actually, especially for a division that didn't have a head at this point. They're all winging it. You have to remember that, folks. There is no overall commander. McLaws is back here at the tower, and Hood's down. And Law, I mean, what's he know? You know? I'm not saying he's incompetent. He's a pretty competent general, but I mean, he didn't wake up in the morning thinking he's going to be doing this. You know? So
it seems like if Lee, you know, if his plan was to sweep up the end of the fishhook, you know, he would have been looking at like everything going on. You know, the lines extended out like there, and he would have been going like, what the heck is going on?
Right. Longstreet needed to modify that attack order is what he needed to do, and he's being so darn stubborn he won't do it. He is pot committed to attacking up the Emmitsburg Road, and that plan is no longer practicable. It just isn't, and that is a barometer to me of Longstreet's demeanor or attitude, mood. How about that? On July 2nd, he should.
Just in a bad mood because he wants to fight elsewhere?
He's in a bad mood because he don't want to attack. According to him, he just don't. Well, that's according to him. He don't want to attack. He don't want to do it.
That supports General Sickles' contention that he threw a major monkey wrench into Lee's plan to sweep up the Emmitsburg Road and take Cemetery Hill.
Yes, and Longstreet, long after the war is over and after many mean things have been written about Longstreet, put that in the context, writes Dan Sickles and said, You know, by far, after however many years, 30 or 40 years, your move to the peach orchard saved the Union Army at the Battle of Gettysburg. Oh my God. Sickles had that thing memorized. In fact, he probably wore it out in his coat pocket, you know, reading it so many times.
Well, it's
right?
quite an admission from General Longstreet to say that, right?
But Sickles really had no idea.
He's old. There's no other way to say it, you know. I mean, he's just old, and he's like an old dog being kicked on too much. And you know, eventually that dog gonna get tired of being kicked on. And what's gonna happen? He's gonna turn around and bite you. And you've seen it in your lifetime. Well, that's what happens with Longstreet. He's tired of people picking on him, and he has you know, some grievance there. I mean, you know, to a certain extent, it's not all his fault. But this program is talking about his command, so it's, you know, it's hard to escape.
Except Sickles had no idea what he was doing at the time, right? I mean, he didn't realize that he was
Come up here for an idle 5 minutes sometime.
I think Sickles wanted to take the high ground, and you know.
Any other questions before I get dumped on again?
Longstreet was just missing Jackson.
Well, Longstreet wasn't missing Jackson.
No.
No, he wasn't missing Jackson. Jackson, yeah, Lee was missing Jackson maybe, but no, those two were all. He would argue those two are always equal.
Matt, where was the spring house for the Rose Farm that was clogged up with all the casualties? Was that around, down in this general area, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Down there, yeah.
I hadn't thought about it, to be honest.
Okay.
Oh, no more questions from you. Any others? Seriously?
Matt,
Yes.
When you said he divided his command, have 2 regiments this way and the 3, I think you said 3 going up toward the battery, did he remain directly in command of both of them, or did he have kind of did separate the command at all at that point?
Kershaw.
Yeah, Kershaw.
Kershaw is, I don't know, is the honest answer, but I can tell you this. Kershaw is with the right flank.
Okay.
Okay? And has no idea what I'm about to describe to you in a few minutes. He has no idea that occurred until after the battle.
Okay.
That clearly points out to me that he is with the right flank.
Okay.
You probably have to look at, I don't know what the reason would be for that. Probably just happenstance, to be honest.
Okay.
You could look at the 3rd and 7th commanders. It may have been his weaker ones. I'm just going out on a limb. I'm not, you know, saying that. But there may be a reason for that.
Okay.
Usually your strongest commander wants to be with his weakest link. That's the way I want to do it. You know, if you're supervising the job and you got a man been pouring concrete for 20 years and you got this novice over here that's doing electrical work, which one you going to pay more attention to? You know? That's what you have to do. You can't be everywhere at once. I like that. All right. What we're going to do is about face. We're going to go through the yard. Let's just form up again over here at the barn, and we're going to follow the left flank of Kershaw toward the peach orchard. I'm going back to the undefeated here. What was that guy's name? Was it Little John? Merlin Olsen? What was his name?
Yeah.
We talked about that. Big John, Little John? What was his name? John Wayne. People, you better know this. What you're saying reminds me of that, because they come to him, you know, he's playing with the little kids, Merlin Olsen is, and they come to him and says, John, they need you to come over. They've got a problem or something like that. And he goes, oh, Captain, I'm tired of fighting. They called you a coward. Well, you know I ain't no coward. I'll be over shortly. I think he brawls with John Wayne, isn't it? No? Who was it? Big Sergeant, somebody like that? I need to watch it again myself. All right, so here we go. Look at that upward slope right through here. You want to talk about artillery fire? I'm not saying it would have saved them, but I'm sure that the what would you say, declivity, which you're looking up, or at least from the Union side, the declivity they're looking down right there, probably would have caused a few of the balls to go high. But look, here come the South Carolinians. Basically, they're aligned with this fence right here. Somebody was asking me about the infantry. The Union infantry comes out to the edge of the hill right there, and that's where they start engaging them. Let's see what I got. Now, here's where Kershaw starts running into trouble. Quote, this is from Kershaw again, "There was never a better advance When we reached the stone house, perceiving that Barksdale, whom I expected to be on my left, had not made an appearance, I ordered the 8th and 2nd regiments to move directly on the battery near the peach orchard, as they were enfilading my advance. So in other words, Kershaw is saying he splits his brigade because he doesn't have any support from over there at the observation tower. They moved steadily upon it until the gunners left their pieces, when an order was passed along the line by the right flank. And the troops obeyed the orders right through there. That's when it gets bad. Keep that in the back of your mind. We're going to take the last few steps. We'll get about midfield and I'll stop you again. I'm going to read that quote to you again. Now you think about these South Carolinians coming through here. The 8th is probably engaged with that Union infantry up through here. And that artillery has an unimpeded line of fire. You want to see if you're man enough? Come out here. You know where to go. You got to walk right into it. One gentleman just asked me, why would they do that? Why would they march right into cannon fire? And you know what? I didn't have an answer. And I still don't. Let's go forward a little bit. Old trim on the pants, by the way. All right. When we reached the stone house, I'll read this to you again. Perceiving that Barksdale, whom I expected, right over there at the observation tower, whom I expected to be on my left, had not made his appearance, I ordered the 8th and 2nd regiments to move directly on the batteries at the peach orchard. There they are. That whole road would have been full of Union artillery. They were enfilading my advance. They moved steadily upon it until the gunners left their pieces, when an order was passed along the line by the right flank. The troops obeyed the order. The artillerists returned to their guns and poured upon them upon the broken attack a fearful storm of grape and canister, which prostrated about 1/3 of those 2 regiments and a small battalion known as the James Battalion, or 3rd South Carolina, which was next to the 2nd in line. All right, so what ends up happening? The Confederates are moving toward this artillery. The Confederates are moving toward the Union artillery. And as they're coming up toward the guns right through here, they get close enough to start for the Union artillerymen to start abandoning their positions. Can you get any closer to victory? And at some point, they get the wrong order, and the pressure is taken off. So what he is saying is he literally, the Union gunners left the pieces and then literally came back to them after the pressure was relieved. As the left wing continued to advance, Colonel Nelson Ames' New York battery fired spherical case, and Judson Clark's New Jersey battery opened with canister. Sergeant William H. Clairville, chief of one of the sections, that's 2 guns, yelled, "This is the stuff to feed them. Feed it to their bellies, boys." What does he mean by that? Depress the muzzle. Bigelow had his Massachusetts boys hold their fire. Bigelow's over here. Hold their fire thinking the troops were friendly out in front. When the wind caught the flag, though, revealing Confederates, Bigelow opened with his Napoleons. The mess pans dangling on the Confederates' left hips made fine targets for the Union infantry in the peach orchard. All right, and that would primarily be the 2nd New Hampshire, which is advancing toward the 8th South Carolina. All right, so in the midst, this is Lieutenant Colonel Frank Galliard of the 2nd South Carolina. Quote, "In the midst of this beautiful advance, the regiment to our right, which is the 3rd South Carolina, commenced moving by the right flank. And this is by facing to the right." Here you go, here's the crux. "The directions we received required us to dress to the right so that this regiment would face to the right and then to the front. We would have to conform, supposing that the orders came from General Kershaw, I afterwards learned that it did not. The consequences were fatal. All right, so what is he saying? Remember when I told you, look behind you, remember when I told you the 7th and 3rd South Carolina had to go around the Rose Farm? What did I tell you? The 7th South Carolina had to move by the right flank in order to get their flanks clear of each other after clearing the house. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, is about the best example I could ever give y'all of how something can go horribly wrong unintentionally on a battlefield. There's a lot of things that people get into pickles and that was their own fault for doing it, or at least the commanding general. This is just human error. That order that was translated to the 7th to move by the right flank, some staff officer from Kershaw came over here and delivered it to them on this flank. The order should have never been delivered here. And so if you haven't picked up on what I'm trying to describe right here, the Confederates are coming up. The Confederates are coming up toward the Union artillery position, and they're close enough to shoot, and they are literally told to face to the right and march this way. And so, I don't know if you've ever been to a county fair, probably most of you have, right out there. And it's basically a shooting gallery, is what it becomes, because when you turn your flank to the enemy, you have no defense, because your flank's to the enemy. So literally, you like a shooting gallery, like those ducks that come up, you know, you have to shoot all the time. You would literally, these South Carolinians would be marching at right angles to the Union guns. Now, you can imagine what's going to happen. All right. So why did they do it then? Why did the South Carolinians do it? Because whoever that staff officer was, they knew him. When he rode up to that colonel, to that lieutenant colonel, and told him the orders, he knew exactly who that man was. And he knew he was from Kershaw's staff. And if a man comes to you from the boss's staff who speaks for the general, you obey the order. That's why they did it. They are not programmed to debate, right? It is only ours to do or die. Right there, they obey the order. And he wrote, quote, "The consequences were fatal. We were, in 10 minutes or less time, horribly butchered. A body of infantry to our left, 2nd New Hampshire, 3rd Michigan, 3rd Maine, opened on us, and as a volley of grape would strike our line, I saw a half a dozen men at a time knocked up, actually, and flung to the ground like trifles. Blew them up in the air and back down. In about that short space of time, we had about half of our men killed or wounded. It was the most shocking battle I have ever witnessed. These familiar forms and faces with parts of their heads shot away, legs shattered, arms torn off. Yet moving to the right, but not retiring, we occupied a piece of woods which gave us protection until the battery was taken by the Mississippi Brigade under General Barksdale." So in other words, they don't get any reprieve until Barksdale comes up here and forces the withdrawal of this artillery from here.
How long after that was that? Approximately.
Oh, not long.
Okay.
Maybe 10 minutes at the most. Now, to show you how recollections can differ, listen to this. In 1876, Kershaw would write to Batchelder that, quote, "Colonel Kennedy, commander of the 2nd South Carolina, confesses that the troops, quote, huddled into the woods in some disorder." I bet they did. "And I have no doubt some went back to the shelter of the Rose House in that ravine." That ravine I pointed out to you when we were coming down the driveway. That's where I'd go. "There was one company deployed as skirmishers when we advanced that rallied at Rose's and remained in that hospitable shelter during the thick of the fight." Now that's an honest statement as I can understand. I'd run too. I'd be exactly where I'm headed, right there. All right, and y'all need not get in my way, because I'm headed back there. So in answer, there are undoubtedly on the right flank. Remember, I'm on the left flank, but talking about the right flank of the left flank. The 2nd South Carolina, being closer to the woods, some of those veterans, some of those men would get into the woods. The soldiers that are closer over here on the left flank, they're not going to get anywhere. All right, the 2nd primarily. They're going to go that way. Why? Because that's a long way to run in front of all these cannons right through here. So I imagine both sides are sort of telling the truth. Private Alex McNeil, the 2nd South Carolina, says, we reached a little piece of woods and there we halted for a time, but the work of death and destruction did not cease. You could constantly see men falling on all sides, and the terrible missiles of death were flying thick everywhere. We stood still and did what we could to pick off the enemy's gunners. It's crazy. All right, anybody getting hungry? All right, let's go on down. We're going to go. Writer, I had to ask him to take his phone out because he wasn't ready. The mysterious stuff writer. Terrible. So I think the ravine is right here. Okay, but regardless, it's coming from the 9th Massachusetts Battery. Folks, you always have to remember with these artillery monuments that they're misleading. For one, they're always by the road, pretty much, and the guns are not always by the road. Okay, number 2, the cannons, the modern day Civil War cannons that are by the monuments are placed close to the monuments to represent the battery. In actual battle, like we're talking about today, they would not have been that close. You would never ideally put your guns that close to each other because of collateral damage. Plus, you want a bigger spread. The wider your guns are apart, obviously you're shooting canister, you cover more of a distance like that. All right, so that's misleading about it. So when I talk about the 9th Massachusetts being deployed right here, yes, their monument is right over here on the Wheatfield Road, but their battery front would have been a lot larger than that. They would have had 6 guns, for example, instead of 2, which you see right there. And they would have had, 15, 20 yards at least between the guns, if not more. So anyway, I think this is the ravine. I think there was a 9th Massachusetts gun sitting right up there where you see that do not turn sign. Right there. Now check this out. Lieutenant William A. Johnson, the 2nd South Carolina. We got the order to move by the right flank. Guess they thought we had enough sightseeing from the front. That's a true lieutenant. And now we were to have a side view. Moving by the flank, there was a depression through which the men passed. In this depression, the men were out of the fire of the grape shot, but the depression ran right up to a Yankee battery, and they quickly placed the gun so as to rake it. I noticed that about every other squad which got in it was decimated, and I saw that the men about me would be the unfortunate ones. We got in it, and while crossing it, I kept my eye on the gun. As I saw the man about to pull the lanyard, I stopped still and turned my thin edge to the fire. It's crazy, isn't it? Bang! Went the gun, and the grape reaped the harvest of souls. I was the only man left unhurt. Poor John Forche of my company fell behind me, his leg broken by a grape shot. Poor Whig Cheney of my company fell on my right. He got a grape which frazzled my jacket from behind. You can imagine his jacket was in tatters from that grape shot tearing through him right there. Forche looked up at me with such a pleading look and asked for water. I gave him my canteen. Then there was Jimmy Cason, one of my schoolmates. He was on his hands and knees with a portion of his skull shot away above his eye. He was out of his mind instantly and died. All right, so they got through that, but you get the general point. All right. Let's go. All right, what we're going to do then is we're going to go up. We're going to get toward the right flank right now. Remember, the remnants of the 2nd, whoever else can get from the right. me get my directions straight. The left wing, from the right flank of the left wing, is going to get up here in these woods. But we still got to deal with the 3rd and 7th South Carolina that are coming on the other side. So I got a little problem. We got that snake rail fence right there, and we got this briar patch where you see these yellow flowers. It usually gives out, if it's still the same, it usually peters out right here in front of us, and they usually mow between the fence and the brush. So I'm going to circle you all around. We're going to follow this fence down to the Pennsylvania Monument, and then we'll take up the narrative from the other side from there. Okay. We just shot a whole bunch of South Carolinians out in the field, and if y'all want to come, I'm going to saw their leg off. Just a minute. Man, for those of you who haven't gotten enough, none of y'all will be there. Like, none. You ever take me back on a tour with that SOB, I'm going to tell you what. It's been said, hasn't it? At some point. Honey, please, not around the kids. All right, during this time, the right wing commander of the 7th South Carolina, Lieutenant Colonel Elbert Bland. Didn't somebody ask me about that, Elbert Bland? Where'd he go? Was that him? Went down with a wound in the thigh. You can imagine how painful that was, but refused to leave the field. Colonel Aiken would write his wife after the battle, "I have never seen so much damage done by the parties in so short a space of time." Bland called Aiken's, quote, attention to the fact that we were then fighting a most gallant enemy. Until that moment, I had not seen a man of the enemy, my entire and constant attention being required to keep the regiment in line and to urge them onward in the direction from which the hissing deadly missiles came. Said Bland to me, "Is that not a magnificent sight?" pointing to the line of gaily dressed Union forces in the wheat field, whose almost perfect line was preserved, though enfiladed by our fire from the woods, decimating the front line, whose gaps of death were promptly filled by each file closer, stepping to the front as his file leader fell. That's the Irish Brigade. Right there. This is about uses them up, too. Many of the 7th South Carolina's men fought and died here, on this hill. Color Bearer Corporal Thomas Harling, the last remaining member of the color guard, picked up the flag, but was immediately shot in the head, casting, quote, a gloom over the hearts of us all. Sergeant Mims fell, quote, with the shout of victory on his lips. Thomas M. Presley, a 23-year-old corporal, was killed, quote, while fighting with commendable bravery. Smoke filled the woods. Shouts were heard all around, and death and destruction permeated everything. Being hit from the front and the flank after approximately 30-minute fight, the 7th began to fall back with, quote, considerable confusion, but no demoralization. Kershaw had ordered the remnants of the 2nd South Carolina to join the 7th's right flank, but the reinforcements were too late. Kershaw in turn ordered the 3rd to rally back at the Rose Farm stone wall. All right, so basically, the 3rd and 7th South Carolina get kicked off this hill, and they fall back to the Rose Farm. At this point, somebody was asking me, all this is happening a lot faster than I'm telling it to you, all right? All right, at this point, Barksdale's brigade is going to break through the peach orchard. Okay, so all these Yankees who've been headed this way have now got a problem because the Rebs are now coming from this way. All right, and when Barksdale clears the peach orchard, he wheels to the left and dresses to the right. That's why he did that, because that was his orders. Wofford's brigade, the one in behind Barksdale, is going to come forward, and he's got a fresh brigade of Georgians, and he comes sweeping through here, and all these Yankees are basically caught facing in the wrong direction. And so Wofford's brigade is going to sweep the wheat field of Union presence. They're going to come. If you were standing here, you'd have seen thousands of them running to try to beat Wofford before they cut him off, pouring out of the Rose Woods over here. Had to be a grand sight. Let me tell you one more story as I get toward the end. In the 3rd South Carolina, Color Bearer Sergeant William Land had the flag at this point. Remember, they're fighting on top of the hill. And some of the comrades thought he was drawing fire with the emblem, and they hollered at him, "Lower the colors, down with the flag." And Lamb would not budge though. Lamb hollered, "This flag never goes down until I am down," and hoisted it again. In the midst of this firefight, 4 brothers from the Thomas family of Walnut Grove, South Carolina, fought with Company K. The youngest, 17-year-old Private Lewis Thomas, was killed. The oldest, 27-year-old Lieutenant William Robert Thomas, fell mortally wounded, while the 3rd brother, Thomas Seaborn Thomas, fell severely wounded. It must have been a heck of a delivery. Only 1 brother survived the fight unscathed. 2 brothers died, 1's wounded, 1 comes out unwounded. And to compound the tragedy, a 5th brother had already died at 2nd Manassas a year before. How'd you like to be that family when they come down? Some of the 2nd South Carolina fell in with the 3rd South Carolina too, and they stood their ground. Lieutenant Colonel Galliard said, "The enemy's infantry came up and stood within 30 steps of each other. They loaded and fired deliberately. I never saw more stubbornness. It was so desperate I took 2 shots with my pistol at men scarcely 30 steps from me." All right, time had run out though, and with the 7th already falling back, the 3rd South Carolina is going to fall back too. With all that pressure, Kershaw is going to call a retreat. I'm tired too. Upon leaving the woods, shouts went up, "That's help for us," from the South Carolinians as a Confederate battle line appeared over the hill at the Peach Orchard. If you ever saw happy men in your life on a battlefield, it was the day when Wofford's Georgia Brigade came over the crest of that hill. Now you look at that on your walk back. That's what those South Carolinians, they hollered for joy when those Georgians came in there. According to John Cox of the 2nd South Carolina, Wofford rode up in person and asked the regiment to join him in the attack. The Carolinians gave a cheer and Wofford waved his hat and rode off. Along with the left flank of Kershaw's brigade, portions of Sims and the 15th South Carolina, they finally showed up. They joined in the advance, outflanking the Federal force here and driving them through the wheat field, inspired by the stimulated smell of victory. The line continued to the base of Little Round Top. They outflanked Romeo and Ayres' division of regular Federal troops in the process. That's U.S. regulars. But the Confederates were out of gas and not enough strength to capture the hill. What did they do? They used up everything they had right here in this area, in the south, in the wheat field area. In conclusion, the losses were heavy, almost beyond imagination. The 2nd South Carolina lost 169 men out of 412, including the colonel, the major, and the adjutant. The brigade lost 649 soldiers out of what did I tell you? 2,100 plus 28 sergeants who y'all kept after the battle was over, even though we left them behind for humanitarian purposes. People ought to be ashamed of yourself. All right. From left to right, 8th South Carolina suffers 33% casualties, 100 out of 300. 3rd Battalion, 46 out of 200. 2nd South Carolina, 412. As I said, they lost 169. Now watch how the casualties drop dramatically over here. 3rd South Carolina, 406 men, 87. 7th South Carolina, 408 men, 110 are lost. 15th South Carolina, they got into it somewhere. 448 men, they lose 137. Kershaw's brigade will never be the same again. The 649 losses here include 2 colonels, 1 lieutenant colonel, 2 acting lieutenant colonels, 1 major, 1 acting major, 2 adjutants, 13 captains, 51 lieutenants, and 1 tired lawyer from north of Columbus, Ohio. And to add to the brigade's woes, 203 wounded men had to be left behind. Right here at Gettysburg. Ladies and gentlemen, 649 casualties, and they're all coming back to one state, South Carolina. That's when casualties bite home, because these little villages, these little towns in South Carolina have to bear the brunt. And when you get the 3rd and the 7th up here pinned down, when you get men from the 2nd and the 8th and the battalion get slaughtered for no reason out there on the field, it means nothing to these families back in South Carolina. All they know is they are not coming home. That's why I think, I had a guy, in conclusion, y'all, I had a guy write me the other day, and he wanted to argue. You know, I get a few people that want to argue, but have you ever been with an argument, I'm not talking about your spouse, but have you ever been in an argument where you knew that it was just no winning this thing? Right? There's no use in arguing about this because nobody's going to change their mind right here. Right? That's why you have a judge, usually, to sort things out right here. Well, I knew right then and there that I was not going to change this gentleman's mind about what he's arguing about. And I finally wrote him, and I said to him, I said, Mr. John, I said, I cannot teach you anything that this field cannot tell you itself. And that's what I hope you got out of this program today. The last 3 hours that we were on out here, this program should have taught you what a loss it took when mistakes are made on a battlefield and the wrong unit gets in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is how people get killed. And that's basically the story of Kershaw. Hard fighting, I want to say before I leave, only the best troops, I've said a lot about them running, but a lot of them came back into the fight. Only the best combat infantry could do that. You would not have done that at First Bull Run. Let's put it that way. They rallied at the Rose Farm, and what they could get back together, I'm sure it wasn't 100%, but those they could get back into the ranks, they came back forward and they fought again. That is a testimony of how badly they wanted it on July 2nd. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate it. All right. Good to have y'all. All right. If you don't have a car over here,